Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Canary demo this morning. My name is Luan from Element 8. I'm the marketing lead. And with me, I've got Gary Lowenstein.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and welcome. We're trying something different today. We are working from home. Without any further ado, I think we'll get going. Let me share my screen, and I hope everybody can hear, and you should be able to now see my screen. So let's talk about Canary. And the very first thing is everybody asks, well, where did the name Canary come from? So in days gone by, probably when I was a young man and before that, the miners used to take canary birds into the mines to detect when the canary showed signs of distress. It meant that there were unhealthy situations. And that was the method that they used to detect that things were going wrong. The Canary system, the Canary Historian, with all of its tools, gives operators and engineers access to data and information that is really not easily detected. So you can find out things that are just not above, that are not easily visible. And it gives you early warnings and alerts to problems that can be resolved before they become disasters. Canary's been going since 1985, and in fact, a couple of weeks ago, they had their first ever conference to celebrate 40 years in business. Now, with Canary, it's all about the data. And one of the things with a data historian is that you need to be able to store and retrieve vast amounts of data. And you need to be able to organize that data properly and do advanced analytics with it and do real-time monitoring. And Canary helps you gain those actionable insights from the operations, which leads to improved decision-making. Obviously, timelessly decision-making is what it's all about. And as companies embrace things like MQTT and a unified namespace architectures, your historian serves a vital role in connecting data with other systems and platforms. One of the great things about Canary is it remains platform agnostic. So a couple of things about Canary. The very first thing that is that it's open. You're never locked into your data. Data is always accessible. We can get data out via various different sources. We'll talk about that in a minute. Your data is secure. You can secure any data within Canary down to a tag level, and it's adaptable. You can configure the architectures that you need. It's very flexible in terms of architecture. Its performance, it's a NoSQL database. We use lossless compression. And what that means is that every single data point that is sent to the Canary Historian is stored. There's no algorithm that says, well, we're going to store 5 values in a specific time frame, first value, last value, minimum, max, and we store every single value that we see. It's very scalable in that a single Canary Historian can store more than 2 million tags. And when you start clustering the historians, you can store many more millions of tags. It's very flexible in that you can deploy it at your edge of network, you can deploy it at a site, you can deploy it at an enterprise, and you can determine what your architecture looks like. And it's been used by every single major industry for over 40 years. And we believe there are 3 steps to a successful Canary implementation. The very first step is being able to collect and store your data. And collect from all your devices. I'll show you in a minute or two. We can collect data from OPC, that's OPC UA and OPC DA if necessary. We can collect from MQTT, CSV files, SQL databases, natively connect to some of the PLCs, and we can even connect to an ignition. The second thing we need to do is we need to assign context to that data. When we talk about contexts, we need to add things like units of measure, descriptions, and very importantly, what I've seen in automation is that you might have 2 different plants or 2 different plant areas provided by 2 different OEMs, and the tag naming conventions are different and the structures are different. And Canary allows you to build what we call virtual views, which allows you to create alias tag names, and tag hierarchies, which enables you to sort your data much better. The third thing you need to do is put your data to work. That means getting the data out as information to the people that need it and to other applications. As I said, step one, collect and store the data. OPC and all the variants, we've got native connectivity to the Allen Bradley PLCs, Ignition, Siemens, Modbus, all of those, and we can connect to SQL Server, MySQL, CSV files, all of those. Just a word, the Canary module for Ignition, it's free to download. You natively log data, so you simply go into Ignition, select the tags that you want to historize, and it'll automatically store them to Canary. That data that's in Canary, you can publish it back to Ignition and transform those data and build asset models. The second step is defining your assets. And as I said, we want to define tags into asset models and adjust the tag naming structure. And we do that in virtual views. The second thing we want to do is create some calculations. And we'll have a look at calculations in a minute or two. But I can create very simple or very complicated calculations. And I can also create events within Canary, which allows me to automate workflows and send out alerts of certain situations. The last thing we want to do is we want to analyze the data. We can analyze that data in Axiom. We can pull the data into Excel, and we can integrate that data. We can send the data out via MQTT Sparkplug. We can send it out via an ODBC driver or an OPC connector, or we can send it out via a web API that we can use to publish data to third-party applications. One of the things that always surprises me is the hardware requirements for Canary. They seem
Very
low.
lightweight.
Yeah, it is always very lightweight. And you know, when I look at a corporate historian, 6 cores, 2.4 gigs processor, 32 gigs of RAM, that's a real lightweight system. I'm going to have to change the slide pretty soon because we support any version of Windows that is supported by Microsoft. The Windows 10 is coming to end of life, so we'll have to remove that. I believe that there is a Linux version of Canary coming out in the not too distant future as well. As I mentioned earlier, the architectures around Canary are very simple, or very flexible at least. So you can have a simple architecture. We can deploy data collectors. We like to deploy data collectors as close to the source of data as possible. In other words, if you're running an OPC UA server, something like Top Server or Kep Server, you probably want to install a Canary collector on that device or as close to your devices as possible. These collectors are not licensed, so you can install as many of them as required. To push the data through a firewall or into a DMZ, it's a single port that needs to be opened on the firewall. We have that Canary Historian, and we then push it out to all of our clients. We can go to what we call a scaled out architecture, a more complex architecture, where I can have redundant data collectors. I can have redundant Canary Historians, and they can all send data out to the various different applications and that need it. So, without further ado, let's get into a demo. Luan, just tell me, can you see my Canary
I see the
Historian
login page.
Cool. So, in front of me here, I have the Canary administrator. I'm going to just log in. And I'm going across the network and a VPN to the office, so things might be a little bit slow at times. In front of me here, I've got the Canary admin tool. This is where I do all of my administration. These areas here that we have are called tiles. If I select any tiles, it opens up the relevant details about that tile. So I've got a services tile, which shows me all of the services and the state of all the services. I have a license tile that tells me the state of my license. The identity tile is very important because the identity tile is where I configure all of my security. And we'll have a chat about security in a minute or two. This historian tile shows me all of my data sets. Within Canary, we organize data into data sets. I can see if I've got alerts on my data sets, and we'll have a look at those in a minute or two. Let's get into the meat of it all.
And yeah,
I want to go and, sorry,
where do you install the collectors?
So I install the collectors typically as close to the data source as possible. So I'm just running everything on a single node here, but I would typically install my collectors on my data collectors, my machines that are collecting data.
That's very cool.
So I'm going to have my data, I'm going to go to my OPC collector here. This is for my OPC UA. In front of me, you can see I've got 4 different OPC collectors running. The ones that are gray are not running. The ones that are green or blue are running. I'm going to go and configure a new data collector. So let's have a look and see what we do. I'm going to create a new session. I have 2 different types of sessions. I can create a tag-based session or a path-based session. I'm just going to create a tag-based session. I'm going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Limpopo. I'm going to say it's tag-based. My historian is my local host. My data set, the data set is an area on disk where I store data. It also collects those tags together. It's a collection of tags. So I'm going to call my data set Limpopo. My URL for this opc.tcp colon. So I think that's it. I hope I've remembered correctly. And I'm going to say apply. And within a data or a OPC collector, I can have different groups. So I'm going to create a group here called pumps. And let's go and browse and let's see what we get. So there, yep, I'm browsing my OPC server. I've got some things here called simulation, and there I've got some tags. Now I can filter out in this here. So I want to filter out for things that are called pumps. And I'm going to say, okay. And there I've got some tags. I can go and associate some tag properties with this. So I can add in things like description. I can add in things like engineering units. I can add in even things that don't exist. I can go and say, I want to understand what my date last service was. And I can add all of these additional, we call them tag properties, to my tags. I can get those tag properties in via Excel. I can add them in. I can drag and drop them in from Excel. I can get them in from a CSV file, and I can get them in via SQL database. I'm going to just say apply. I'm not going to worry too much about putting in metadata right now or the tag properties. I'm going to browse again, and I'm going to add a couple of other things, simulation examples. We go here back to functions. Popo, and we're going to filter our chap for -T0, and I've got some things there. I'm going to say apply, and I'm going to say okay. So I don't know what I've done there, but anyway, let's apply that, and I've now got some tags that I have. If I go back to the status of this, you'll see that the status is idle. If I start it, it will now start collecting data for those tags. We can see all of the data. We can see the latest value coming through. If I go to my historian tile, in a minute or two, oh, there it's already created that data set for me called Limpopo, and it's created a history block for me for today. If I go and look at some of my other ones that have been running for a while, you can see it creates a history block for me for every day. If I go into the history block, I can see all of the tag details, all of the details of every stored tag that has been stored for this day. Now, I want to go and have a look at some views. So in fact, let's just go back to my historian tile. If I go and look here, I've got a data set called Rand Water, and I've got some nice tag names in there. I see that they're pretty well prefixed, and they're pretty descriptive. If I go back to a data set and I choose something like this data set, I can see they're pretty cryptic. What you'll notice down the bottom here is this is where I've added those properties or that metadata in, where I have this coming in. And these ones I added in from a CSV file. Let's go and look at some views. And as I mentioned earlier, the views allow me to, first and foremost, alias tag names. And secondly, it allows me to build a tag structure. I'm going to go and create a new view. I'm going to look at this view called, I'm going to call this, again, let's make sure that we're typing. Test view. I want to use my Canary, and I'm going to use my Amgani data set. Now, one of the things about views, and we'll have a look at this just now as well, is I can combine various different data sets into a single view to make it look like one. If I have an enterprise infrastructure where I have multiple historians, I can combine data sets from multiple historians into a single view, once again, to make it look like one. I can go and add properties to this, so I can add description as a data source. And as I said, I could go and add multiple sources to this one. And we've got one that I've got pre-built already, and we'll have a look at that. But here is the tags. Now, one of these things, as I said, we're going to do some aliasing. So we use regular expression. I was playing with regex the other day, and I was struggling because I'm not that bright. And then I remembered that we've got this fantastic thing called ChatGPT. I went to chat and I said to chat, build this regex or the regular expression for me. And it did. But there's also many different places where we can go and look for assistance around regex. So I want to go and do some alias tag names. So what I know about regex is anywhere where I find regex says this, in Afrikaans we used to call it the kapiki, with a U. In other words, it starts with a U. I want to replace it with the word Amgani. And what you'll see is that it's taking that first section and it's replacing it with the word Amgani. One thing to remember is it doesn't change anything. It keeps the original physical name. All it does is it changes the way that I can view it. It doesn't duplicate any data. I'm going to go and add a few more. I'm going to go anything that's ST followed by a digit. I want to replace it with the word station, and everything must follow on. Let's go and say I want to add anything that's got a P followed by 2 digits. I want to replace it with the word pump. And last but not least, let's go and say I want to follow anything that's got a T followed by digits. I don't think I've got towers in here. Let's just see what we've got in here. Yes, T0. T followed by 2 digits. Why is it not finding it? There we go, because it's case sensitive. I want to replace it with the word tower, $1. And I can go on and I can build up this to look exactly the way I need it to build. One of the other things that I can do is I can go and create what we call an asset rule. So an asset, I'm going to go and say, I've got an asset called a station. And I'm just going to call it a station. And let's see what that's going to start doing for me. It's going to start building up. And I've forgotten something in here. I'm not going to do it in here. I'm not going to build up the assets in here. I can just go and create that view. Let's go and look at somewhere where I've actually built some assets. So here's a view that I've got already configured, this water district view. You'll see here that in my source views, I've configured multiple different views into a single view. Let's just go back there and let's go and say I want to edit that view. Then you can see where I've actually gone and said I want to go and build my tag hierarchy. And you can see that it's building a tag hierarchy for me. Now, the important thing about the views is that this is what gets exposed from a security perspective. So if I go to my identity tab and I go down here to security, I can go and say which views, or sorry, let me go down to tag security, which view do people have access to? So at my top level here, I've said this user element 8, he has access to everything. And at this top level, everything then gets forced down. So you'll see that everybody or element 8 has read write on all the subsequent views. What I've done here is I've gone and said, oh, I've got a user here called Gary. He can only see, if I look through all the views, the only thing that he can see is this view here called Water District. And when I start looking down, that I am inherited along those lines. So important is that views is where I can secure it. And I can, as I mentioned earlier, secure it down to a tag level. Let's go and look at some other things that we can do. Let's talk about calculations. So calculations, I can create calculations. I can create very simple calculations or pretty advanced calculations. I'm going to go and create a calculation here. I'm going to call it a demo calc. Did I spell that right? I don't know. Well, what I can do is I can associate a calculation with an asset path. Now, when we start looking at these asset paths, if I go and look at this water district here, I've got some assets in here. I've got an asset called a district. I've got an asset called a pumping station, and I've got an asset called a pump. Within every single area or every single asset, I've got all these sub-assets. If I go and say I want to associate this calculation with a pump, it's going to create a calculation for every single pump in the system. So I'm going to say, yeah, I do want to create it, and I want to use an asset for a pump. And you'll see that I've got 48 pumps that it's found. So I'm going to create, in this case, I'm going to create 48 calculations. I don't have to go and do a calculation for every single pump. If I add more pumps into my system, it will automatically go and add them into the views, provided they conform to the tag naming structure that we have, whether it's in the raw data set or whether it's in the view. As long as it conforms to that tag naming convention, it'll automatically get added into the view, and then it'll automatically get added into any calculations that we have. So there's that. I can associate some metadata with it. I'm not going to associate metadata. I can say backfill this calculation to a certain period of time. So in other words, if I've already got data stored and it's a new calculation, I can backfill it. If it's an old calculation, I can remove that I'm changing. I can remove old data and go and recalculate everything on the new calculation that I have. I'm going to say I can choose to do this on a value change. So I might want to do this, might be a roll-up that I'm doing when a pump stops or starts or anything along those lines. I'm going to say just do it periodically every 1 hour. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. I can say enable the time extensions. And what I have here on my right-hand side is all of my functions. Now, if I go and select any one of those functions, at the bottom, it tells me what it does. So I've selected average. It says it retrieves the average value of the data set over the interval. and below that, it tells me the usage. I can say something like delta total count retrieves the total delta of the value, whatever. I'm not going to go and read. I'm just going to go and say I want average. If I go and select that average there, it goes and adds in the usage. I can now go and specify my asset tags. Remember, this is associated with an asset. So I want to use current and my duration. I want to say 1 hour. It won't work. It needs to be there. And I can go and say, evaluate this value for me. It's giving me a result. And I can say, let's output this to a tag. So I want to save this value as a tag. Now, best practices in Canary that all my calculated tags are stored in their own data set. So I've got a data set called calcs, and I want to call it calcs, and percentage means that I'm going to that percentage asset that I'm writing it out to means that I'm going to write it out to whatever the asset name is, and I'm going to call this my 1 hour average. And I'm going to say apply, and I'm going to say close, and I'm going to start that calculation. It tells me that it's waiting to start. Oh, and it's given me an error for whatever reason. Let's try and understand what the error is. Oh, it's because I forgot to put in I said yesterday when I was doing the demo yesterday, man, I can't do two things at a time. I can talk or type, but certainly not both. And there we go. That demo calc is now running. It's in live mode. It's busy doing its thing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I can go and create these calculations to be as simple or as complex as I need it. So I could go and say, once again, I want to create it for an asset. My asset type. I want to use this rather, water district. Once again, I'm going to go to this and I'm going to select for a pump. And I'm going to say, yeah, I've got a variable called A, and we're going to keep it pretty simple. We're going to say average of A, and we're going to go flow in this case. And I'm going to say 1 hour, and I'm going to evaluate that. And I'm not going to write the value out to a tag. I'm going to go and add another calculation, and I'm going to say B. And this might be some other calculation that I'm going to write. I'm probably going to do something that doesn't make much sense, but I'm going to go there to this, and I'm going to say current, and I'm going to say for 1 hour, and I'm going to add another calculation, and I'm going to write this out, and I'm going to say this is A divided by B times 100. And I'm going to go and do the evaluation for that, and it will go and do it all. And once again, I can write this out to a tag. And once I apply it, I can go and start that calculation, and it will go and run. Just some ones that I've got running. I've got something here called the running time average. There are one or two that are quite interesting in these calculations that I've done here before. Here's a more calculated, a more complex one. I wanted to see, I think there's one where I can go and, well, there I've added some metadata into this one. There are others where you can actually force a tag to a 1 or a 0, depending on the result set. You can write out to the tag a 0 if it's true, or a 1 if it's false. I can't find that. I'm not going to spend time looking for that right now. But that's calculations. Let's go and have a look at the real stuff. And the real stuff is Axiom. Axiom is the client tool that we use for this. I'm going to log on here as this user here. Naturally, it would do that to me. And what I wanted to show you is I'm logged on as that user element 8. And you'll see that I have access here to every single data set and view within the system. If I went and logged on here as the user Gary, or myself, you will notice that I only have access to specific data sets and specific areas within the data sets. Let's go and create a trend. So Axiom, one of the things that Axiom does is it is our trending tool. I'm just going to go and add a couple of tags here. And let's have a look at a few things. Bottom left, I have my start time. I can go and adjust my start time. In the center, I have my duration. I can change my duration. I can go and say, I don't want to see for, I think it's 1 hour that I want, that I've got here. I can go and say, show me for 2 days, and it'll bring back the data for 2 days. I can go and scroll left or earlier in time. I can scroll right, which is later in time. I can put myself back into live mode, or I can pause my trend. I'm just going to go and say back to 1 hour. And I'm going to put myself in live mode. At the bottom here, I have my legend of all my tags. Now I can do a couple of things with the legend. I can show the legend, hide the legend. If I right click, I can go and say, show me, first of all, display us as a grid rather than as a key. I want to see the source tag and I want to see the cursor value. So I can see all of these values. I can move them up or down if I wanted to. I could say, show me the cursor value right next to the, or the raw value right next to the display name. So I could move that around. You'll see that as I'm moving my cursor, I have my cursor value at the bottom here, and I can go and hide that legend just by changing it there. You'll see that the trends are arranged into what we call bands, and I can link multiple bands together. I can go and select one band and add it to another band. So now what I've done is I've overlaid those two trends on each other. To undo that, I can undo that band. I can also change the way the trends are represented. So I can drag these two trends over each other. I can go and do things like edit the scales. I can specify minimums and maximums. I can go and say, for this tag that I'm showing here, change the color of the tag. So I might want to say I want to show it as a green tag rather than as red. I can say, don't show me the left scale. For this tag here, for this, don't show me my right scale. I can go and specify limits, maximum values, minimum values, all of those things. I have them here. As soon as I start drawing over these tags here, I have this auto band little toolbar in my toolbar. And when I select auto band, it will go and put it back to what it was. Let's just go and select those two tags and go and make sure that I've got the scales available. I can go and add more tags to the trend. And there's another way that I can do it. I can do it from here, but I could also go and add calculated tags. So I might want to go and say, I want to create a tag called CPU percentage. And that CPU percentage, I'm just going to say it's CPU usage historian divided by CPU total times 100. and I'm going to add that. And it's going to put that tag down at the bottom for me. And I'm going to drag this tag and I'm going to drag it up there. So I've now got these tags here. What else can I do on this? Let's go and have a look at this tag CPU percentage. I can go and say it's got an auto scale, it's got a minimum value, a maximum value. I can go and say, show me the high limit. Now it could be a fixed value of 0, or it could be variable, and I could say that it's against a tag. So I want to go and see where the CPU usage percentage was greater than, and I'm going to do total. Let's see if we get any values. And I want to change the color. I want to make the color purple or whatever that color is. And we'll paste it in there. And I even want to fill that whole area in. And let's go and see if it's done anything. I can go and zoom, and let's zoom in over here. And it doesn't look like I've got any of those results. So let's go and change it slightly, that instead of using CPU usage total, let's go and say we want that one there. And there you can see wherever it's above, it's highlighting, it's filling the color for me. It's doing all of those cool things for me. I'm going to go and create a new chart because I want to keep things a bit simple here. Let's go and once again add a couple of trends. Just going to add those two trends, or in fact, yeah, those two trends. That'll do nicely. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go and add the CPU usage total or historian. I'm going to add that one a second time. And what I'm going to do now is this one here. I'm going to change its name to, where are we? Just want to select this one here. I want to change this thing's name to CPU usage yesterday. Let's get rid of that bracket. And I'm going to do a time shift of 1 day. And it's now showing me yesterday's CPU usage. I can go and let's go and drag it. Let's do it that way and that way. And then I can see exactly what's going on with my CPU usage. Let's go and add another tag. In fact, we'll create a new chart, new chart again, and we're going to go and add another tag. This time I'm just going to go here and I'm going to go and add those 3 tags. Let's see what they look like. So yeah, I've got some tags. This bottom tag here, which is state. I know that it's a, just in this case, it's a 1 or a 0. I don't want to represent it as a chart. I want to go and represent it as a state. And that's quite interesting. So I'm going to say the states that I have, drawing state, I'm going to say when it's a 0, I want it to be colored green. And I want it to say that it's stop. And when it's a value of 1, I want it to be colored red, and I want it running.
We've got a question here, Gary.
Yep.
Can you apply filters to eliminate noise in a trend, something like a moving average?
Yes, absolutely. We're going to look at all sorts of averages now. And I was going to do it in the application, but sure, we can do it on here. We can go and say, I've got different types of aggregates. So this is a standard chart that I've got here. I can go and apply all of the aggregates that we looked at earlier to a trend. So I can go and say, I want an average. I want a time-weighted average. I want totals. So I can apply all of those different averages to my trend. I can specify what aggregate intervals I want to have. So if I want a 10-minute aggregate interval here, I can apply that 10-minute aggregate interval. Great question. So I can go and apply all of those aggregates, filter out noise. I can specify highs and lows. So absolutely, I can do anything that I want there. I hope that's answered the question.
Yeah, thanks, Peter Sattler.
Let's go and do some other stuff. So the Axiom can do what we call or charting or trending. But what we can also do inside of Axiom is we can build some applications or some dashboards. So now an Axiom application consists of a few things. It consists of screens, controls, and once I select a control, those controls of the screens have properties. So I've got a screen in front of me here. It's called screen 1. The properties, I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. And one of the things that I can do with the screen is I can associate it, and some of my controls, I can associate them with assets. So you'll see those are those assets that I defined earlier from my views. I'm just going to go for building this. I'm just going to select this particular tank station 1 pump 1. And now I'm going to go and add a couple of things to this. The first thing I'm going to add is I'm just going to add a trend. So, hold on, before we go there, before we go to that trend, let's go back to my screen. And I did say that I'm going to choose an asset. If I take this into what we call runtime, I would have an asset picker here where I can go and select my asset instance. I'm going to do it slightly differently. I'm going to change my asset picker. I want to make it inline. So it's always going to be visible to me. Let's go now. We'll go and add our trend graph to our screen. I'm going to make it a little bit different, and I'm going to go and add a trend, and I'm just going to choose these two tags, and I'm going to say add and close, and there I've got that. I'm going to go and add something else here. I'm going to go and add in a bar chart. So bar chart, I'm going to select this tag called flow. I could select multiple tags if I wanted to, but I see I'm running out of time, so I'm just going to select one. I've got just flow, and I'm going to go and change the properties of this. First of all, here I've got aggregates. So I'm going to say I want an aggregate of 1 hour. I can select it as 1H, which will represent 1 hour. My aggregate type, I don't want it as a time average. I want to do this as total. And that's total delta count. Total will give me the total that I want. I'm not going to worry about scales. The duration, I want it to be for the day. And you'll see what I can do is I can say, so now it's showing me 24 values, showing me for the entire day. And when I want it to start, I want it to be now minus 24 hours. And now it's showing me that. I can go and do something like edit the title of the screen. I'm going to call it production data. And there I've got this screen now called production data. As I go and select different asset instances, it's going to go and update everything according to that asset instance. I'm going to go and add another screen here. And I'm going to do this one slightly differently. I'm going to simply go and add what is called an asset template to the screen. And once I'm going to choose towers here for my asset template. I want to make this screen a bit bigger. And I'm going to go and make my asset template fit my screen. And then it's created an area for each one of these. I want to make this a little bit bigger because I want to do some nice fun stuff on here. I'm going to go and add here, I'm going to add a symbol. Symbol, I've got all of those symbol factory for any of us that have used skaters in the past. I've got all these hundreds of thousands of symbols. I'm going to just put this symbol down of a tank. I'm going to add a gauge to my tank. I'm going to choose a tag for that. I'm going to call it level. I'm going to add my level. One of the properties I want to change here is I want to change the color. I'm going to make that color blue. And I'm going to go and add a couple of other things here. First of all, I'm going to add a label. And I'm going to change my label name to be temperature. And I'm going to go and add a value box here of temperature. That temperature could be, I could go and change the aggregates of what I want to do. For the sake of time, I don't want to do that right now. I want to change the way it looks, and I want my horizontal alignment to be left. So there I've got all of those cool things. I can go and do things here, like once I've got this visualized, first of all, it's showing me all of this, but I can go and say, I want to filter out, and let's just see where temperature is greater than or less than 49 degrees. I'm going to say I want to go and see where my temp, that tag, is less than 49. And it's only going to filter out what I want. I can go and do all sorts of things. I can filter, I can sort, I can do any of those things. Last but not least, I'm going to create one other little screen for us. I'm going to go and add a grid to this screen. I'm going to make it a bit bigger. And into a grid, I can go and do a couple of things. First of all, I can associate a grid with an asset again. So I'm going to associate it with a pump. It's just going to go and populate the grid with all the pump details that we've got. Don't tell me. There we go. I've got all of those pump details. My grid consists of, if I look at the grid, it consists of columns. I'm going to go and add some controls to my columns. I'm going to go and add a value box in here. And I'm going to choose the tag on my value box. I think my network has gone a bit slow. I'm going to choose just current there. And it's going to put all the current in there. And I'm going to go and add a spark chart in as well. And I'm going to choose for my spark chart, I'm going to go and choose flow. One of the great things, or one of the cool things that I like in this control, so there it's added in my spark chart, I can go into this control and I can go and say, add the headers. So header 1 is going to be my tag name. Header 2 is going to be my current. And header 3 is going to be flow. And I can go and do some calculations on my columns, which is going to give me a total. One of the other things I can do here in my control is I can go and say, and I just want to find out where it is on my grid. I can go and select that, and I say, when I've selected this area, I want to navigate to something different. I can navigate to a different application, or I can navigate to a different window or a different screen. So what that'll do is I take it out of that, and I go navigate, it's going to navigate to whatever I have selected on that grid. So if I'd selected pump 1, it would select pump 1. If I'd selected pump 3, it would select pump 3. I see we're running out of time, so I'm going to get back to my presentation. If I can find where I show it from, I think you should be seeing the presentation. A couple of things to remember. Foundation is the key. Companies that are at different stages of their transformation journey get peace of mind by knowing that your industrial historian that you choose can scale to your needs. With Canary, you can start off very small. You can start off with a 3,500 tag Canary that comes with an unlimited number of Axiom clients and an unlimited number of Excel clients. And you can scale it up to be 100,000 tags, and we can even go to unlimited. We have got clients in every single industry. If you can think of the industry, we've got clients there. We've got clients in mining. We've got clients in metals. We've got clients in NASA's one of the clients in the US, oil and gas. It is in every single industry across the world. And it's absolutely trusted and proven. We've got several reference sites in South Africa. If you'd like to know more about them, please contact me. Just a little quick reference story from one of the users. He says it's versatile and it provides everything that he needs. If you need more information, feel free to reach out to me, gary.lorenson@element8.co.za. And with that, have a great day. Thank you very much.